good position. So for Kai, he's got the tough job of having to be the one that stops Gab from ever executing his game plan. Whereas Gab, he can let Kai get Crashing Footfalls resolved, get some Rhinos on the battlefield, and just go, living end?
Yeah, 2 4/4s. That's cute. All right, everybody, it's time for round number 13. Cedric and Paul are in the booth with you this round. Take it away, you two. You think you like this matchup?
I like it from I get to watch it.
Not bad.
And this makes my job incredibly easy. Cedric Phillips and Paul Chian here in the booth. Thank you so much, Maria and Monty. We are going to watch two of the very best to ever sleeve up a Magic card play in round number 13 here from Barcelona. On one side of things, Paul, there is Living End. The other side of things, there is, of course, the Rhino strategy. The two Cascade decks of the format. But I think, as Monty mentioned a little bit here, I think very advantageous here for Nassif.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, when you're looking at Kai's deck, he's got a lot of dead cards in Game 1. We're talking about cards like Subtlety, Dead Gone. Very good at answering cards in other players' decks, but not in this matchup. They are almost completely dead cards in this matchup. Meanwhile, as Monty mentioned, Nassif's deck is able to go over the top. So I think Game 1, Nassif has a gigantic advantage. And then after sideboard, Kai might be able to answer back with some copies of Endurance out of the board.
Yeah, the goal here for Kai is to not let a copy of Living End resolve, because if one does, it's almost certainly game over. Speaking of games, we're going to watch the first one right now in front of us to kick off round number 13 of coverage. Top is Kai, bottom is Gab. It'll be Temur Rhinos versus Living End, and Nassif will kick things off with a cycling of a Street Wraith. So down to 18, Nassif will go, and you already do see the hand here of a Force of Negation, a Curator of Mysteries, two Architects of Will, a Misty Rainforest, and a Mystery card coming. So Paul already has the Cascade card, just needs the lands to cast it.
Yeah, it just kind of has it all. And you do see Nassif going for that Street Wraith turn 1 because if you can find a Grief off the top with that Street Wraith, then you would want to cast it on turn 1, get that information. Can fetch this turn 1 as well, still cycle the Architects of Will, and have an extra black card backup if he does find a Grief off the top.
Yeah, so you do see Nassif sacrificing that Misty Rainforest for an untapped breeding pool. There's a cycle of the Curator of Mysteries. Going to pick up another copy of Violent Outburst, which isn't necessary given the first copy, but in the off chance that the first Living End is countered, the second one Nassif already does have, of course, via the Violent Outburst. So we're going to head Kai's way. You do see both these players checking in at 9 and 3 here, so very much still in top 8 contention.
And yeah, Nassif has no shortage of Cascade effects here with that Shardless Agent off the top here. So just like you mentioned, just needs to find land number 3 here to begin kind of trying to execute his game plan of returning those giant creatures from the graveyard.
And this time around, Nassif is not going to main phase cycle again. He's just going to simply play a Misty Rainforest and pass the turn back. In the interim, Kai is going to sacrifice a Wooded Foothills. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Triome here, which we do. So shuffle and presentation here from Kai in just a second. You do see in the hand here for Kai 2 copies of Fire Ice, a Questing Beast, a Force of Negation. Those Fire Ice are notable because they can slow Nassif down a little bit, Paul.
Right. This is the turn where you're going to want to, Kai's going to want to use that Fire Ice because, of course, land number 3 is the most important number, right, for Nassif. He wants to be able to play one of those Cascade spells, so he'll be able to slow Nassif down here for 1 turn. The problem is if you're on Kai's side, not a whole lot of pressure here, right? Nope. You do have the Fire Ice. He doesn't have a Cascade spell. He does have that Questing Beast. Pretty terrible in this matchup. Yeah. It's a card that was meant to be brought in for all the one-ring decks that are out there in the field, but of course, in this matchup, simply just a 4-mana 4/4.
Now, Nassif is already down to 12. I mentioned the life total here in addition to the cycling of the Curator of Mysteries, as Nassif will draw another card, because the nice thing here for Kai is that he doesn't need to deal 20 points of damage. He only needs to deal 12. And when we're talking about creating 2 4/4s in Crashing Footfalls, it might only take 1 attack to get the job done, depending on how the rest of the game goes. So if you're looking for positives in this particular game here for Kai, that would be one of them. Nassif is already pretty low.
Yeah. So Kai, of course, does go for the ice on the land here. Probably going to cycle this. Did draw a Grief. Wants to find a black spell if possible to fire off the Grief to make sure that the coast is clear to resolve one of his Living Ends.
So we are going to head back over to Kai. The German Juggernaut will draw a card for his 3rd turn of the game. Plenty of cascading now here for both players. We're going to see Kai immediately sacrifice this Scalding Tarn. Did pick up a copy of Shardless Agent, and as you can see as well here for Kai, does have a Force Negation with a blue card rolled up. So, as far as casting a Rhinos is concerned, that's an option here for Kai that I think we're going to see him take, but you already see Nassif has this Force of Negation, excuse me, ready to rock and roll.
With double Violent Outburst here, so...
Oh, Nassif says that resolves right away.
Interesting. Okay, so Nassif really wants to find... Does he have a black spell for the Grief here just to make sure that the coast is clear?
Well, Nassif doesn't necessarily need a black spell here. It would be nice to be able to put the Grief into the graveyard, but I think we might just see Nassif play this turn, which is cycle something on the main phase, play the Gemstone Caverns, play it Violent Outburst on Kai's turn, which turns on Nassif's Force Negation.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to play Shardless Agent because your Force Negation isn't turned on.
Right. Because if he does it on Kai's turn, Kai would need 2 counterspells.
Correct.
Right? Mystical Dispute is a card.
Correct. So we're going to see Violent Outburst here. The Cascade trigger will, of course, resolve. This is going to be a big surprise. I can't wait to see what it's going to be. Ooh, look at these creatures. Beautiful, beautiful forest.
Will you hit? Will you hit? Will you hit? There it is. Oh, wow. He found it.
I can't believe it.
He found it. And of course, Kai just casting it here.
Yeah, Kai will play his Force Negation, which he'll have to hard
this should lock it up here.
Nassif has his. Kai accidentally cut Nassif's deck after the Cascade. You're supposed to, of course, shuffle and present the cards that were cascaded away. I promise it won't matter. As Force Negation counters Force
How much
negation.
Power is this, Cedric?
I can't count that high, Paul. I thought you guys knew that when you hired me.
Right. Well,
I normally attack with
enough.
I normally attack with 2 2s.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I do.
These are some 5/5s, some 4/4s. Oh, let me architects you as well, even though it's totally irrelevant.
Yeah, the Architects of Will trigger will allow Nassif to take a look at the top couple of cards there for Kai and rearrange them. And this is exactly what Monty did talk about. As you see, Nassif is going to also Architects of Will himself, since 2 did enter the battlefield. But as I mentioned, this is exactly what Monty did talk about insofar as living and resolving either on offense when you're ahead or on defense when you're behind. It's just game over.
Yeah, and there's not a whole lot Kai can do.
No.
He just has to kind of go for it. He did have the Force of Negation backup, and his only hope was just, I hope you can't counter my counter.
Yeah, that's it. And obviously, that did not take place. Game number 2 about to be underway here between Kai and Gab. A very favorable matchup here for Nassif, as you did see there in game number 1. The big question is, what does Kai have to maybe turn things in his favor, Paul?
4 copies, the full 4 copies of Endurance, which is a fantastic, fantastic card in this matchup. So now Nassif does have to try to play around that card. What is a way to do that? Well, obviously Force of Negation is not a card that works, so you might see Gab board in multiple copies of Subtlety as a way to fight the Endurance.
Yeah. Lorien Revealed is going to be land cycled away here. You do see that Kai did start things off with an untapped Stomping Ground, hence the life total being at 18. Kai going to figure out exactly what island to search for, and it will just be a basic at this stage of things. I think part of the reason for that decision is that red enchantment that is in hand, Paul, in Blood Moon.
Going for the surprise Blood Moon here, potentially, to try to shut Nassif's mana off. The problem, though, is that this Living End deck also just plays land cyclers that allow you to just get the forest or the island if you really, really need.
Yeah, when these land cyclers did get printed in the Lord of the Rings, I didn't know how good they were going to be. It just kind of seems like, a couple of big creatures might be important for limited, but turns out a real boost to a lot of decks in the modern format.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now you get to just play. You just made a deck that was already pretty consistent more consistent, right? Because now you get to ensure that your graveyard will be absolutely loaded. You get to basically cut 6 lands for 6 cards that get you lands. And so when you cast that Living End, all of a sudden you have an extra 5/7 on the battlefield.
Yeah, it is. Very good are these land cyclers in this Living End deck. No slouch in Temur, Rhinos, and other strategies here being played by folks this weekend as well. As you've seen, Nassif is going to sacrifice a Misty Rainforest, Curator of Mysteries, and Generous Ent already in the graveyard. Nassif falling down to 17 in the process of this fetch. See if he wants to go a little bit lower, or perhaps is he eyeing up playing around Blood Moon.
Like this. Well, look at this. He's
the two old.
Not his first rodeo.
That's right. The 2 old guns. They still know how to do this thing.
like, you know what? I think I can play around this Blood Moon. Not a big deal.
And again, main phase cycling here in case something like Grief works itself into the equation. Oliphant was the draw, so we're going to head back over to Kai, who did suspend a Crashing Footfalls last turn, so that's why you see the counters go down from 4 to 3. Now, Kai does have that Blood Moon that we did mention, but Nassif appears prepared for it. Questing Beast looks like it may have been the draw step for the turn, and now Kai is going to play and sacrifice a Misty Rainforest. Could go towards Shardless Agent here. Now, if you do elect to do so, that's no blue card for Force Negation, Paul.
Yeah, no Force of Negation. Might just need to go for it anyways. Knows that the Blood Moon is basically ineffective, as he does know that Nassif went and fetched a forest off the land cycle on the Generous End. So it might be just one of those, all right, I'm going to do this and hope you do not have a Cascade spell to living end your creatures from the graveyard back into play.
Well, Kai has said, you know what, enough of this playing around Blood Moon nonsense. I'll go get myself a breeding pool. Here is a Shardless Agent. Trigger, it could be anything. We'll take a look-ski.
All right, and this might be a pretty quick game if Nassif just goes for it here and doesn't try not to play around the Endurance.
So, a couple of copies of Endurance.
That's 2 Endurances.
Yeah,
that helps
and
you,
that
right?
gives you a little bit of information.
If you see all 4, you know the coast is clear.
That's right.
I brought out all the Rhinos to have room for the Endurance, apparently.
Kai and Nassif, some good table talk between the two. As mentioned earlier, these two are teammates for this tournament. They've known each other for a very, very long time. Now there is the Crashing Footfalls. So this is placed on the stack. Nassif let this resolve last time when he had the opportunity to counter it in game number 1. He'll take a look at the cards that were revealed from the Cascade and to get some information, like the number of Endurances that were revealed.
Yeah, and this time I believe Nassif doesn't have an Outburst.
I believe Shardless Agent is the Cascader in hand.
Yeah, so I wonder if in this instance Nassif will fire off a Force of Negation, right? Just in case Kai happens to have a counter.
Yeah.
Right? Because he can't fight back with his own Force of Negation.
And again, Nassif is taking a look at and basically just gathering information, which is a very smart thing to do. I think a lot of the time when we watch players cascade in spots like this, they may say, those cards don't matter, I don't really care. But Nassif, always thinking and always trying to maximize his chance of winning a game and a match, wants to know exactly what cards were revealed. So there were some Force Negations and some subtleties there as well that are clearly not in Kai's hand. So Nassif, as you do see his hand, there is that Shardless Agent. There is no Force of Negation. So these Rhinos are in there.
Yep, they are in play. And Nassif, I mean, at 17, likely just going to go for it here. We'll see.
See a striped Riverwinder. Pardon me, that's a bit of a mouthful. That was the draw for the turn.
The only action he has is the Shardless Agent, Mystical Dispute as a disruptive spell.
Now, I am curious on this turn if Gab, because he is rather patient a lot of the time when he does play, and he's probably going to take some time to analyze this turn, which is, okay, can I afford to take a hit of 10?
Right.
And if I do and fall down to 7, what are the ramifications of that? Because Nassif does have the opportunity here to cycle a stripped Riverwinder, and what's that draw step going to be? Or does he feel as though he just has to go for Shardless Agent now?
I feel like he just doesn't have... Because one of them is a land cycler too. Mm-hmm. Feels like he might just need to go for it here.
Well, our questions have been answered. This is going to be a Shardless Agent that's looking to cascade into
and
a
no blue card for the Force of Negation in Kai's hand. So this is going to resolve.
Yeah, the hope here for Kai was either the Nassif didn't have it or he was afraid and wouldn't go for it.
Right, just play around it. It's like, oh, you're not afraid of Endurance?
Mm-hmm.
Kai's always had a crush on me.
So,
Take a look and shuffle.
Living End is going to resolve. 2 Curator Mysteries and a Generous End will enter the battlefield alongside that Shardless Agent. Now, I want to see if Nassif is going to remember the food token.
Food?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Trust me.
Well, you remember the food token from the end.
I mean,
That's
when
the
you
big
have
one.
16 top finishes, you got to remember the food token.
I'd be surprised if you
Maybe.
missed it. Maybe indeed.
Maybe.
Oh, Kai.
Can I forget the food trigger? Yeah.
Yeah, he sure did.
I don't get a food. No.
He missed it.
He missed it.
All right.
We're going to head back Kai's way.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Oh, nice. This is what I like to call the game inside the game, Paul. Take your small
It's like,
victory.
you got me, but I got you.
Yeah, that's right. So Kai's going to pick up a copy of Wooded Foothills. 2 questing beasts, Force Negation, and Blood Moon in hand. You can start subtracting cards in hand here for Kai because the Blood Moon, not particularly relevant.
Nope.
The questing beast, it's okay. It's not the best thing you've ever seen, though.
Yeah, but with the 4 copies of Dead Gone, I think Kai just didn't have enough cards to bring in outside of the 4 endurances.
Yeah.
So probably just brought it in hoping it might be useful.
Yeah, because there will be those games sometimes where Living End is paying a lot of life to get their lands,
Right.
to cycle Street Wraiths, and maybe you can get a little bit lucky in that spot of dealing the final 4 points of damage. For now, it will be a questing beast.
Okay. That trades with a generous end.
Oh, Nassif wants to give this one a read. Good news for you, Gab. Not a ton to take a look at.
Got a lot of text.
Looks like it's
All
going
right.
to trade with a Curator
Yeah.
of Mysteries.
Okay.
14, 17 rates.
We'll head Nassif's way. A very large advantage, and a Riverwinder is the draw.
I suppose if Nassif can cycle into a Violent Outburst, could end it right here, right? Just for the +1/+0 effect.
I'm going to kick things off with a cycle. Now remember, with Curator of Mysteries, when you do cycle, you get to scry.
It's not just a 4/4 flyer.
That's right. So now, it'll be a Breeding Pool enters the battlefield untapped. Now here's an attack for a healthy amount.
Getting it for 11. Kai down to 3 here.
Rhinos almost resolving.
One more turn, Kai.
That's right. Here is another questing beast. And a Mystical Dispute is going to take care of
Like I kept
that.
Force of Negation.
Gab
Then I
Nassif
had to cast my last blue
and
card.
Kai Budde are going to
I don't think I
chit-chat
could pass
about
turn.
this
Yeah,
game.
it's just,
Yeah, their hand's not great to pass the turn.
yeah, like I figured, like lands, Blood Moon, and Force is probably a key, but you played around the Blood Moon, so that didn't really do anything anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
just
love
you mulligan
to
too
be
much, then one brief.
A fly on the wall for all their conversations. Gabriel Nassif going to win this match pretty easily, 2-0. It's an incredibly favorable matchup for Living End. It's actually part of the reason some players were scared to bring Rhinos to this tournament, because if Living End, Paul, was very popular, that's kind of how that goes.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and if you're on the other side of the things, it's just how prepared do you think people are for the deck? It's like, if Living End is one of those decks where if you want to beat it, you likely can, but you have to devote a lot of slots, and Modern is so wide open. There's just so many decks to prepare for. You know, you can't just overload your deck to beat that deck.
Yeah, so we do see Gabriel Nassif, another victory for the Yellow Hat. Living End moving on to 10-3. We're going to take a short break here, but there is more magic to come, and the one and only Maria Bartholdi is going to tell you all about it.
Hey everybody, you're not going to want to miss this coming up next. Andy Garcia-Romo on Rakdos Evoke versus Dominic Harvey on Amulet Titan. Fun fact, he's got an 80-page, 32,000-word guide to Amulet Titan, so he knows how to play the deck, Monty.
He absolutely does. Rakdos Evoke, the most played deck of the tournament here in the hands of Andy Garcia-Romo, trying to get a turn 1 Grief or Fury on the battlefield, and this is backed up by a lot of disruption and mid-range value engines, just trying to make sure your opponent doesn't play the game. On the other side, Amulet Titan in the hands of Dom Harvey. This is a bit of a blast from the past, using Amulet of Vigor alongside the bounce lands from original Ravnica to start generating some mana, and once you add some additional land drops in the mix and Primeval Titan, this can lead to some very explosive turns, finishing your opponent off either with a double striking hit aided by Sunhome or Valakut the Molten Pinnacle.
That's Rakdos Evoke versus Amulet Titan after this.
first. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pro Tour, the Lord of the Rings, here in beautiful Barcelona, Spain. Cedric Phillips alongside Paul Chion, as we're going to dive into more modern action here, round number 13 and day number 2. We just had the opportunity to see Gabriel Nassif dispatch of Kai Budde. Now we turn our attention to two players that are playing some very fun decks. On one side of things, we have our most played deck in Rakdos Evoke in the hands of Andy Garcia-Romo, playing in his first Pro Tour. On the other side of things, it's Dominic Harvey playing a deck that he knows incredibly well, an Amulet Titan, far from his first Pro Tour, Paul.
Yeah, and not surprising that he's playing this deck. And not gonna lie, when I was preparing for this event, I go, this is the Pro Tour I'm finally gonna learn how to play Amulet Titan.
Okay.
After multiple misplays and opening up Dominic's 80-page document, I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't gonna be.
I think just leave it.
I'm just gonna leave it to the pros.
That's right. So Dom Harvey has played a ton of Amulet Titan. That deck is actually what kind of helped him break out into the competitive Magic scene a couple of years ago. For Andy Garcia-Romo, it could be this weekend that causes his breakout with a 9-3 start. A couple more wins would be a requalification one, but hey, we could see Andy in the elimination rounds depending on how these next 3 rounds do go. Harvey kicking things off with an Urza Saga and Amulet of Vigor, the namesake artifact of the deck, and now this
Exactly what you want.
is some griefing to be done. We'll take a look at Dom's hand here. Looks like another Amulet and a Boreal Grazer, a Summoner's Pact among the options here
And
for
I
Harvey.
believe that's a One Ring.
And does appear to be the case.
But doesn't have another land.
No, so the fun thing about this deck is you can keep a hand that looks like this sometimes, and especially if you do draw a Simic Growth Chamber or different Ravnica bounce land, can go kind of crazy from here.
Right, so Dominic choosing to keep this for the immense upside if he can find a bounce land off the top.
That is correct.
Because if he does, I mean, he just can do everything.
You kind of go nuts. This is also a deck that does play a boatload of lands, sometimes over 30 of them.
Right.
And against a deck that you know is going to be playing copies of Grief, you don't really want to mulligan particularly much.
Yeah, and I wonder if you're on Andy's side, if you take, okay, gonna go for the Amulet here. I was wondering if he was going to consider some of the kind of the win conditions, given that there is an Urza Saga already in play with an Amulet.
We will head Dom's way. That Urza Saga is going to tick up to 2.
Bounce land?
That's the best draw. I mean, almost any land would be good. And again, you're just playing the numbers here. You don't know exactly what land you're going to draw,
okay.
if any at all. And it looks like Harvey did not draw one. So Ragavan is here. And Ragavan is attacking. We all know how this song and dance works. The reveal will be a Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Could play it if you really wanted
Well,
to.
you could.
Yeah.
A treasure is created here for Andy, who's dodged the bullet thus far. And now there is an untapped Blood Crypt.
And he's
Sure,
going
might
for
as
it.
well.
All right, now so Dominic's gonna be on 0 lands after here. We'll find likely a second copy of Amulet here.
Yeah, that does lead to a lot of upside. So, going to float a colorless mana Will Harvey. Looks like he picked up a copy of Primeval Titan for the draw step. But what does Dom want to search for? That is the question. Things are pretty straightforward on Andy's side of things. Just try to kill
Right.
Dom as fast as possible.
Okay.
And now Harvey has found another Amulet.
So needs to find a bounce land here to kind of try to unlock his hand.
How about no?
How about no?
How about no bounce
Just
land?
2 amulets and let's figure it out. Because if Dom did find a land, would have access to 4 mana,
Yes.
right? Because you have 2 triggers with the amulet, and then he's got the Arboreal Grazer.
Yep.
So he can use the Grazer to put the bounce land into play again, and all of a sudden you have 7 mana. Get a Primeval Titan,
And we go off to the races. From
and then on page 17, paragraph 3, Dominic will show you the line.
that is correct.
Right.
It'll be a Fable the Mirror Breaker here for for Andy. That'll generate, of course, the 2/2 Goblin. That does make treasures. And it'll be on Chapter 1 with a very powerful 3-mana Saga and passing the turn back. Is it a bounce land? Is it a Simic Growth
Really
Chamber?
needs one, and
it is not.
no. Still has a turn here, perhaps.
Now we'll see Chapter 2 of Fable now. Multi-format All-Star is that red Saga. So we'll see if Andy would like to do any drawing, discarding. We'll answer that question
Wow,
pretty
nothing.
quickly. Not interested at all. So into the
Likes
red
his
zone for
card.
6, Primeval Titan gets revealed.
Can play it. Oh,
Well, it looks to be prime
all
time,
right.
baby.
Stop hitting yourself.
So, now
This
it's
is a lot.
prime time. Look,
This is a lot.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm gonna. If Dom draws a bounce land, I think Andy is dead. Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Draw.
Bounce land?
Growth Chamber, Celestia Sanctuary. Okay.
there's a rod farm.
That's the dog. All right,
That's the
Farm.
rod farm. All right.
Buckle up, everybody. We're about to have a whole bunch of fun.
All right, and I'm not even going to try to figure out what's going to happen.
Partner, that's what I'm here for.
All right.
I'll do my best Dom Harvey impersonation. I ain't great, but I'll try.
I'll just let Dom Harvey do the Dom
He
Harvey
can do
thing.
his thing, too.
But I know that with the Grazer and the Rot Farm, we'll have access to 7 mana. You saw the Summoner's Pact. You get a Primeval Titan.
At least, well, he's drawn a Primeval Titan in the interim as
Oh,
well.
he
So
does
there's-
have one.
There's at least one Primeval Titan working
So
itself into the
you
equation.
can even get more mana if you pack for example, an Azusa.
An Azusa,
right?
a Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Cultivator Colossus could potentially
Absolutely.
work itself into the equation. There's a lot for Dom to think about, and given that he's facing something that is resembling lethal damage next turn, he's going to have to do a whole bunch this turn.
Right.
Oh, yes. I love it. Give me those mana counters.
No, I
Okay.
believe I believe Andy had a Terminate in hand. Could have kept that. All right.
So 4 mana at this stage of things. 2 green and 2 black.
Land drop for the turn.
That is correct. And you see there, that other die is for the number of land drops. So down to 1 green. It's a Boreal Grazer. 2 triggers from the Amulet.
Oh, man.
So 2 more each. And do it again. So
7
Harvey is
mana.
now up to 4 black and 3 green.
Well, this is from the Grazer. Yeah.
Next up is Prime Time. Down to 1 floating mana. It's going to be a green. Trigger, couple of lands, if don't mind if I do ski.
Are we getting the Slayer Stronghold here?
I don't think it's time for that exactly yet. Of course, Dom is going to know far better than I will, given the experience with the strategy. But I
Right.
think he might want to go towards
Lots of mana?
lots of mana, especially with the Summoner's Pact in hand, to maybe
Right.
give both of the Titans haste on this particular turn.
Sure.
So I think at some point we'll see that, assuming he hasn't drawn either. And now here's a Celestial
go double bounce
Sanctuary.
land.
Yeah. And given the 2 amulets that are on the battlefield, it's going to be Sanctuary and Simic Growth Chamber. Now, again, there are going to be multiple triggers here, as Dom is going to explain. So we'll get a white counter on here, too.
So now we have 8 mana. 8 additional mana, rather.
Correct.
One green floating. Additional green.
Yeah, so we're up to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total. 5 of which is green, which is the most important, probably.
This is off of 1 land, Cedric.
That's all it took.
Just 1 land.
Now here's a free Summoner's Back and a search up. This could be a prime time. Again, this could be Dryad of Leasing Grove, but it will be
Okay.
prime time.
There we go.
Given the 2 amulets, that's probably the highest impact, highest upside thing to do.
Yes.
So here's prime time. We'll see what floats after casting this.
White. 3 green.
And keep a white available. All right.
So 2 green and a white floating, 2 more lands coming. Now could be the time for
Now-
Slayer Stronghold and
now-
Boros Garrison,
That's
potentially.
right. Need the red source here.
One card that Dom does like to play quite a bit in this strategy is Crumbling Vestige.
Sure.
And it is pretty good alongside Primeval Titan as well. Now, I don't know if this will be the time for it or not, as it looks like he was
It
thinking.
gives you 1 red source.
It gives you 1 red. It gives you
Yeah.
1 red, yeah. Looks like he may have been thinking Slayer Stronghold and Boros Garrison.
Right, because with that, you can stack it in such a way where you can target both Primeval Titans.
That is correct, and that's exactly what
Right.
we're going to see happen. So those under the battlefield tap, target 1, target 1. They'll both get +2/+0, Vigilance, and Haste. Oh, he'd like to attack. That's
Oh,
interesting.
yeah? That's 4 lands now
That's
going to be
right.
coming into play here. So now Dominic needs to find the right combination of lands to get here to make sure that he has enough mana to give both Primeval Titans double strike.
And do remember that Boros Garrison is on the battlefield because Primeval Titan's triggers happen.
Right.
And then, of course, he has to pick up a land. So there will be 1 land on the battle.
So it looks like a Vesuva to copy the Boros Garrison to give you the double activation on the Boros Garrisons.
Garrison.
So now that's 4 mana, 8 mana.
Have 2 red, 2 white.
So 2 red, 2 white floating. And again, he still has another Primeval Titan trigger to resolve.
So this is enough for the double Sunhome activation. And now you get the Sunhome.
That's what it looks like. And now there's a Sun Home.
I'm going to give both of these double strikes. That'll be 32.
And it'll give both of them double strike and 32 trample.
32, and you only have 6 to block.
Yeah, what's your other land?
I do like that Andy asked, what is your other land that you're going to get? Looks like it's going to be a Golgari Rod farm. Dom Harvey's going to win game number 1 here in very impressive fashion over Andy Garcia-Romo. That is part of the appeal, folks, of playing Amulet Titan in Modern.
Yep. Just needed a single bounce land. Now, things change here after sideboard.
They absolutely do.
Andy Garcia-Romo has 2 copies of Magus of the Moon and a Blood Moon in the sideboard to bring in. And, of course, the Amulet Titan deck has an extremely difficult time dealing with those permanents.
That type of card is the scariest card for Amulet Titan to play against in the Modern format. Harvey looking to dodge that style of effect basically all weekend long. It is notable here, too, that with Dom's record checking in at 9-3, you have to presume he's done at least well enough in the Modern portion of this tournament. With Rakdos Evoke being the most played deck, looks like he's doing a decent enough job.
Yeah, sure.
Dodging those Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon effects.
Yeah, and I believe you heard it in the deck tech earlier, but you know this is the type of deck that probably has a decent matchup against the Tron decks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, a lot of Tron in the field. So that's kind of the deck that he wants to be playing against.
I
All
like
right,
this.
so
We
just
are
aggression.
We are all in. Evoke Fury and bring it back via Undying Malice. This will be a forest.
But Dom Harvey has 3 dismembers in the sideboard and has one of them.
Yes, indeed. Taking care of that Fury and that all-in game plan here from Garcia-Romo.
Just the clean 3-for-1 there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's a ton to come back from.
Yeah, that is difficult.
Because that's the kind of clock that can actually beat Amulet Titan.
Right.
And it's been solved at the cost of 4 life, as there's a Dothi Voidwalker here for Garcia-Romo.
And the Amulet, too. Great hand here for Dom.
And what will the follow-up play be here? Can be somewhat explosive on this turn. Crumbling Vestige is going to trigger, generate a mana, and then enter the battlefield untapped because of the Amulet, but nothing to do with the mana, so simply passing the turn back.
And I think there might be an Engineered Explosives in Andy Garcia's hand, so likely going to be firing that off to get that Amulet Vigor off the battlefield.
And he's going to start things off by attacking here for 3 with the Shadowy Voidwalker.
Probably going to fetch a basic Swamp here, because he does have outs to drawing one of his various Blood Moon type effects.
It looks like of the snow-covered variety is that
okay.
Swamp.
And I don't think Andy has too many other options here, so I would just be really scared of just having an Amulet in play.
Yeah,
so.
well, if you can kill an Amulet, it's almost certainly
just
best
do
to
it.
just
Yeah,
do it.
get it off.
Yeah, so as we saw just how powerful that card was last time around, now we'll have a Void counter on it from the Void Walker, but more importantly, it's off the battlefield.
Yeah.
We're going to head back over to Harvey now.
Harvey does have some time here at 13 life.
Looks like Golgari Rod Farm.
Okay.
Just going to pick up
it.
the Vestige and pass the turn back over to Andy Garcia-Romo, who again is playing in his first Pro Tour. I don't think it's his
Dashed.
first time doing this, though. Going to dash a Ragavan
Oh.
in a 1 ring.
Almost, if he had a land, right?
And looks like that'll be the turn.
Okay.
Now, we don't have a great idea what the texture is of Harvey's hand at this
Right.
stage of things. We know that things can be very
4 mana.
explosive.
Is this 1
is
ring?
4 mana, and this is the 1 ring.
Okay.
And that,
Oh.
we're going to see a Bowmasters in response. Okay.
Yeah. This will buy Dom this turn, right? Because Andy cannot attack him this turn.
At least this turn.
At least this turn. But it is also pretty punishing when you do activate the 1 ring, because now you're triggering the Bowmasters.
Mm-hmm. So Harvey will have some decisions to make on how to use this very powerful artifact. And again, remember, as over the course of this game, Andy is still always drawing towards those moon-style effects.
Right.
That will change the entire complexion of the game if he's able to
Absolutely.
finally find one. Just hasn't been able to yet. It looks like Harvey is going to activate the ring right away.
So this will trigger Namask, but the Bowmasters cannot target Dom right now, as he has protection.
That is correct. So let's head back over to Garcia, who we know there's a Ragavan over there for Andy.
And I believe that was a Fury, which doesn't do a whole lot here. So I think we're just going to see a pass from Andy Garcia. I suppose you could also just play the Ragavan. I'm not sure what type of interaction this Amulet Titan deck has for that.
Garcia-Romo going to give this one a bit of a think. As you mentioned, Paul, with the Bowmasters out there against the ring, you are still getting some damage done now that the protection is off.
So at 6, if you activate this, you draw 2, but you would take 2 more damage. Go down to 4, but then it's a question of whether or not Dom has enough to combo off. Needs, of course, to find that amulet.
You can see a little bit of a look into Harvey's hand there. There is a Valakut hanging out. It looks like multiple copies of Summoner's Pact at this stage of things, but killing that amulet with that Engineer Explosive is very, very important for Andy Garcia-Romo in this game because it really slowed Harvey down in a very meaningful way.
Absolutely. There might be a Terra Sunder as well in Dominic's hand.
Well, I know that song and dance with the fingers. It's never good when your opponent's doing that with the fingers.
It's like, hold on, I'm mathing right now.
Yeah, just give me just one moment. Let me do a whole bunch of counting with my counting deck. You have to imagine the question here for Harvey on this particular turn is there a way I can kill you? Because I am in some trouble as far as the life total is concerned. But is there a way I can finish you off?
And I imagine that just starts with an amulet here.
An amulet or a Primeval Titan. Now, casting a Titan this turn is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
But not impossible. And you can see the hand there for Garcia-Romo. 2 cards, it's a Fury and a Ragavan. That's it.
Yep. And because I think Andy just has him dead next turn, right? Because you can just attack with everything. Even if you kill the Voidwalker, if Andy chooses to dash in the Ragavan, that's an attack for 5. And then on upkeep, Dominic would die to his ring.
Yeah, those burden counters, aptly named.
So this is a big turn. That's why you see Dominic taking his time here.
We're going to kick things off with a copy of Summoner's Pact. So that is going to go underneath the Voidwalker's counters as well. Going to join that amulet that was blown up earlier in the game with the Summoner's Pact. So now what will Harvey search for? It's going to be Azusa Lost but Seeking.
Okay. Puts a creature onto the battlefield. You can play a couple of extra lands here, but without the amulet, it's not too scary.
So is that where Harvey's going to start the turn is the question. Harvey's going to start by getting some mana counters. Looks like this is going to be a colorless that's floating.
Okay, is it an amulet? It is not.
No, it looks like it's going to be one of these Ravnica bounce lands. Looks like he's leaning towards Simic Growth Chamber. And he is. So that's the first land drop for the turn. There could be more. And you see Andy Garcia-Romo keeping track of that.
Okay.
And now here is the Azusa. So no mana floating at the moment.
But 2 land drops available.
So there's another land drop in Beseju. That's 2. And Crumbling Vestige is the
3 mana. So is there just something else to play here?
And it looks like the answer is yes. It'll be another Summoner's Pact.
Okay, so he's got a...
Play Dryad.
Okay.
There is an additional land drop available now.
There is. Now, remember, Dominic does need to pay for 2 Summoner's Packs.
Well, we'll get to that later.
Okay, we just worry about that later. That's a later situation.
That's a later thing.
Okay.
And now this is going to be Valakut. So we're going to get a trigger. Because of the Dryad's text, all of the lands are everything. Valakut cares about mountains. We're satisfying that clause now with this land drop. So there will be one shot, and it looks like it's headed towards the Voidwalker.
The Voidwalker, and he does have exactly enough, I believe, to pay for double pack next turn, but he'll just be totally tapped out.
So Voidwalker down. These two creatures that are on the battlefield here for Andy Garcia-Romo don't do a great job of getting through a Dryad.
Right.
But we know something that Dom does not know.
And that is a Fury.
There's a Fury over
There
there.
is a Fury. But that is not enough to kill both creatures. Oh! Was that a feigned death?
Yeah, you said that. You said that.
Was that a feigned death?
You were right when you said it. But they're dead now.
Oh. Oh, and so now they're dead, and he's going to go down to 3, 2 from the burden count? Yeah.
And then, of
All right.
course, on the upkeep, we'll
Yep.
have to pay the 2 packs
Right,
and can't
yep.
do much past that. Andy Garcia-Romo's going to win game number 2 here over Dominic Harvey.
Wow, feigned
And
death.
I am glad that we're going to get a third one between these two decks and these two players. Game number 3 coming here to you in round number 13 of Pro Tour, the Lord of the Rings. Harvey going to start things off with a Radiant Fountain, going to go up to 22 and play an Expedition map. Both these players did have to take a mulligan, so 6 cards for each of them.
Now, what does Andy Garcia have the grief here?
Yeah, what kind of awesome start is there? Remember that last game, there was a turn 1 Fury that killed via
Right.
Dismember. Felt like after that exchange, Dom was almost certainly going to win. Clearly not the case.
Yep.
But immediately, Andy Garcia-Romo was going to put Harvey to the test with a Ragavan.
Yeah, I mean, Amulet Titan and also Tron are the kind of the 2 decks where Ragavan really shines.
Absolutely.
As those are the decks that don't play the extremely powerful 2-drops that deal with it easily in the Bowmasters and Ren and 6.
There's a real priority from the Amulet Titan side to either have an Arboreal Grazer or just blow right past that thing.
Right.
And hopefully the reveals aren't too bad. Game 1, we had some fun reveals. That Golgari Rod Farm, that one doesn't matter too much. But the treasure does, and Ragavan's going to bring one of those along with it.
Not a whole lot of disruption here, though.
No, it
from
doesn't
Andy's
really
side.
look like it. If I take a look at Andy's hand here, I'm trying to find if there's any Blood Moon or Magus of the Moon effects, grief-style things going on,
Okay.
Thought Seize.
There's an explosive.
There is an explosives, and it's just curious if explosives is supposed to take care of that expedition map or not.
Right, or do you just hold it for the amulet?
Well,
Oh, it
it's
looks
actually
like just
okay.
going to get a little more aggressive here
Well,
instead.
easy peasy. That's Seasoned
right.
Pyromancer, for those of you not in the know. Is not a bad find here. A couple of cards to discard.
Oh, it has multiple explosives there.
Looks like interested in getting rid of both of them. Okay.
Okay, so now Amulet becomes kind of scary. Ooh, but that was a Blood Moon.
That was a Blood Moon. So you see some of the power there of Seasoned Pyromancer. Also going to generate 2 elemental tokens since the cards that were discarded were non-lands. As we head over to Harvey, who I would say is in some trouble, though I don't think he knows it yet.
This is just powered by Ragavan. Turn 2
Yep.
here. Look at this board.
Now, the one thing we do know that does exist in Harvey's hand right now is that Radiant Fountain. That was picked up a little bit earlier in the game. So that'll be redeployed. Harvey's going to gain 2 life back to 22. And, well, here come the math, the number counters here, the mana counters, pardon me.
Right. Not going to be an Amulet here, as you would have played that ahead of time here. But nice blocker for the Ragavan.
And it looks like it's going to be Transmute Tolaria West. So this will allow Harvey to find any land or any 0 mana card in his deck. Converted mana cost 0 is all that matters here with this.
So you can get a Summoner's Pact.
Okay.
It's one of the more common targets for the Tolaria West.
So the big question now is there a third land in hand for Andy Garcia-Romo? And the answer is yes in Marsh Flats.
There is, and Blood Moon. So now Dominic has to find a way to not only stop the offense from Andy's side, but find an answer for the Blood Moon before he can try and combo off. Nice thing about the Expedition map, though, that's in play, you can use it to search for a Boseiju.
Yep, or a Basic Forest.
Right.
Either one. Whichever one of those you may be missing. Now, if you're missing both, I don't have any solutions for you. As you see, a snow-covered swamp search for there with the Marsh Flats. Have to imagine Blood Moon's on the way here, Paul, and that's a world of difficulty here for
yes.
any Amulet Titan player.
But as you saw from the previous game, Dominic does have cards like Terra Sunder
Yep.
to deal with these problematic sideboard cards. Big beatdowns, block the Ragavan, taking 4.
Yeah, pretty simple block there, of course. You'll let the other ones through. Ragavan does have a
And it's-
triggered effect when it does hit, so
it's time.
yes, it is. It is Blood Moon. So now this is the true test, of course, because the Amulet Titan players, they've played against Blood Moon. Otherwise, what are they doing here?
Right.
Now, what is your experience level on beating a resolved Blood Moon? That's what we're going to find out here from Dominic Harvey.
Gonna need green source plus. Now, if you have green source plus a card like Terra Sunder, you can just use that to kill the Blood Moon. Don't necessarily need the Boseiju here. So it really just depends on what Dominic's working with in hand.
Valakut's going to be the land for the turn. Because of the Blood Moon that's on the battlefield, Valakut's enter the battlefield tapped text is obsolete. So that's why you do see that land enter untapped as we head back over to Garcia-Romo.
But 4 mountains in play here for Dominic Harvey.
They're some of the nicest mountains I've ever seen. Here is a Terminate on that Arboreal Grazer. Going to clear the way for the Ragavan to get in a hit.
Ragavan is now on.
This will be an attack here for 6. Harvey's going to fall down to 12. You'll get a Ragavan trigger, revealing Primeval Titan.
Okay.
Is there a follow-up here for Garcia-Romo? Does Andy need much of one? I think in a pretty commanding position.
Right. At 12, though, so now if you're on Dominic's side, you have to think, if he doesn't have an answer in hand, of course, it's, do you fetch the forest? Do you fetch the forest to try to find something like a Terra Sunder? You could still draw a Boseiju off the top, right? But having access to that green source does give you the outs to draw to kill the Blood Moon.
Well, no search just yet.
Waiting to see what he finds off the top first before making that decision.
Well,
okay.
the forest is there.
So now you can fetch the Boseiju.
You can.
And kill the Blood Moon.
And Harvey's just going to pass the turn back, sitting at a modest 12, as it looks like another Fury or Ragavan may have been the draw step. So, Garcia-Romo needs to turn up the heat here a little bit.
He does, though.
In for 6 more. Trigger, Summoner's Pact, not you.
No green creatures in Andy's deck, last time I checked. But with the treasures now, can also just choose to hard cast Fury if he wants to put a little more pressure on the battlefield.
It looks like this may be another Engineer Explosive. So
Number 3.
Andy brought in 3 of these.
Yep.
And now Harvey is going to immediately sacrifice this Expedition map. Our best guess here is
Gotta be
Boseiju.
Boseiju.
And,
Gotta
there,
get the Blood Moon.
and there it is. Now it's
Yeah.
going to kind of leaned towards that explosives there. For a second.
Wants to get rid of that one, too.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So this is where things get a little bit interesting here, partner, because we know that there's we're pretty positive there's a Summoner's Pact in hand here
Right.
for Harvey.
There's
Now-
a Valakut in play.
Now, there is a Valakut in play. So how effective is a card like Primeval Titan in a spot like this versus how effective is a card like Dryad of the Elysian Grove?
So the Dryad of the... I mean, it depends also on how many lands Dominic's working with. But if you have, for example, multiple lands or a bounce land, if you go Dryad, and then you play a couple lands, you can get the Ragavan and other threats off the battlefield,
Yep.
right? If you go for Primeval Titan, Andy needs to have a removal spell to get it off the battlefield, or he doesn't have great attacks.
Now, of course, given that there is untapped mana here for Andy, if we put ourselves in Dom's position, is my opponent holding a Terminate, right? You've had spells in your hand for a little while.
Right.
You know, you haven't cast Grief, you haven't cast a Fury. What could your hand be? What am I supposed to play around?
Right. Now, the nice thing is Andy's already cast 1 Terminate.
It's very true.
So that eliminates that. Most lists play 2 to 3 copies of the removal spell. It looks like Andy's playing only 2.
Okay,
So
so
you got to run the numbers
yeah,
there,
you just
right?
play the numbers, and do you have your second one?
Right. And you have to think it's pretty unlikely that you have a second one. And if that's the case, do you feel safe just playing a Primeval Titan? Right? Because if you do, you can block one of the 2 power creatures. You'll still take 4, go down to 2.
Yep.
Right? Does
then-
Andy Garcia have a Lightning Bolt? Did he keep it in?
Yeah.
Doesn't have a lot of great targets in the matchup. Now, Dominic could find a bounce land and bounce the Radiant Fountain.
Also
Replay
true.
that.
Yep.
That would put him back up to 4, which would put you out of bolt range. So a lot of things to think about here with what you want to get here with that Summoner's Pact.
And especially sitting at 9 and 3 here in a Pro Tour where requalification and maybe even working himself into the conversation of the World Championships is at stake. A very important decision for Dominic Harvey. And we do see the Summoner's Pact in hand, so I have to imagine that's what is being thought about here. Now already starting to tap some mana. Does have access to 6 to start the turn. No land drop has been played yet.
So this is just Primeval Titan, no pact.
That's what it looks like.
All right.
So of course there will be a trigger. 2 lands will be coming.
I think certainly one of the cards is going to be a way to pick up that Radiant Fountain this turn. Now, Andy Garcia did have a Fury, but does he also have red card plus a Feign Death effect?
It's a very good question.
Because if he does, that does get the Primeval Titan off the battlefield. I believe it's still not a lethal attack, though, because if Dominic gains 2 life here, he will go up to 8, will take 6, and will still be alive.
And there are ways to get some other knuckleheads in the way, like this.
Colony Garden.
That's right, an 0-1 plant. Who'd have thought would be so problematic?
But with the Fury and the Fury returning, that's still going to be enough to get both of those creatures off the battlefield.
That is true as well. So, the Garden and the Growth Chamber are going to enter the battlefield. A couple of triggers, one for the Garden, one for the Growth Chamber. Going to pick up the Radiant Fountain, replay the Radiant Fountain. As you mentioned, Paul, and Harvey's going to go up to 8.
And Harvey's just going to go, please don't Fury me here.
Yes.
Please do not Fury me. I'm so close to stabilizing. I did what I could. This was the best possible play, but Andy's got it.
Well, we are going to head over to Andy now, and Andy will draw. Can Andy Garcia-Romo, in his first Pro Tour, win this game and move on to 10 and 3? Qualified for this tournament, pardon me, at the most recent regional championship in the United States.
Maybe he doesn't know.
Well, here is Fury.
Oh, right.
There's the exiling of Ragavan.
Oh, and I'm sure if you're Dom, you're like, no,
Now
not
there
like
is
this.
the Feign Death as well. Gonna clear all that up.
Now he's still alive.
It's true because of the Radiant Fountain.
Right?
Still alive.
Still alive, down to 2, still has a turn.
Here's the attack, trigger the Ragavan. That's going to reveal a Valakut, which that may matter.
Right, absolutely.
Most Amulet Titan lists nowadays only play 2 of those. One of them, of course, already on the battlefield. Marsh Flats, pass the turn back.
Okay.
Harvey, what can you do?
Does an Amulet get it done?
Well, I think it'll help.
If you go Amulet, Pact, Titan. That's an attack for 16. Andy's at 17.
Oh no, the finger dance is back. It looks like Dom may have drawn a copy of the One Ring.
The One Ring does buy you a turn.
It does. Now here's...
I'm
at 17, yeah.
17. Does mean a fully juiced Primeval Titan is still 1 damage short from lethal, just from the +2/+so and the double strike.
The Slayer Stronghold and the Sunhome.
Right.
Okay.
So, gonna play a Forest, Will Harvey.
You're good.
And now this is a Summoner's Pact for a prime time. Gonna do a little shortcutting here. Of course,
Okay.
Dom is just going to search his deck again, so that's why you
Yeah.
see no shuffle plus present. Just gonna figure out how to cast this Primeval Titan. Also, just a second ago, for clarity, you saw Harvey play that Forest, pick it back up, and then replay it. That's his land drop for the turn.
Yep. Absolutely. So Dominic's plan here is to go Primeval Titan, get some value here. Maybe a bounce land plus a Tolaria West.
Looks like the card that he's most sure about is Tolaria West. The second one, I think he's a little bit more uncertain.
Yeah, but you want to be able to pick that up, right?
I presume. Here is a Selesnya Sanctuary, going to pick up a
All right.
Tolaria West.
And then you got the One Ring here to not die. and then you have to pay for the pack, but you do have a potential attack next turn with Primeval Titan.
And so there is the one ring.
Okay, still alive.
Still alive indeed. Die on top of the deck to remember to pay for the packs. Very smart, as we're going to head back over to Andy Garcia-Romo. Paul arguably had the best turn possible last turn.
Right.
Going to need one heck of a draw step this turn.
What you got? Just a lightning bolt off the top?
It's a Dothy Voidwalker.
So not the most relevant card here, as he's got plenty in play for lethal. What can Dom find here?
Well, if Dom gets another turn, this game almost certainly ends. As long as he doesn't forget to pay for his pack, and you see him very quickly untap because I think he knows how favorable the situation is now. So he'll pay for the pack. Remember that he did put Tolaria West back into his hand. So this could be...
Ooh, he's getting excited here.
Yeah, with how fast he's moving, this is almost certainly going to be search for Summoner's Pact, get a Dry Elysian Grove.
Okay.
My lands allow me to Valakut you into Kablooey.
How many... Are there 2 Valakuts in the deck? Because one has been exiled.
Well, how's Vesuva
Oh,
sound?
Vesuva is all same thing.
That's
is this
right.
just lethal?
Well, here comes that prime time, baby. And so there will be a couple of triggers. Don't forget the bounce land triggers as well, which means that Harvey has done nothing like playing lands. Dried Elysian Grove allows additional land drops. This
is incredible.
Valakut triggers and all of that jazz. So it's going to be a Simic Growth Chamber. And you see Dom is explaining exactly what is going to happen here.
Yeah, every land that comes into play deals 6 damage, as he has 2 copies of Valakut in play.
And that is going to do it. Dominic Harvey is going to win this game and match here over Andy Garcia-Romo. A fantastic one between the two. Amulet Titan squeaks out the victory there against Rakdos Evoke.
I mean, both times back against the wall, having 1 turn left to live, Dom finds a way. Game 1, needs a land, finds it at the last possible turn. Same thing here, finds the 1 ring to survive. That 1 extra turn to get there with... Didn't even need an Amulet that time, right?
No, and that's kind of the appeal of this deck, because I know the deck is named Amulet Titan, and we understand why. We just saw the power of Primeval Titan, but the deck can operate without an Amulet of Vigor. It just goes into supercharge mode when it has it.
Yeah, and this goes to show that when this deck is in the hands of probably one of the most capable pilots of this deck, knowing the ins and outs, knowing exactly what he can do in every single situation, that's how you get those little percentage points to be able to squeak out wins like this.
That was a game there, folks, in game number 3. That was beat a Ragavan, beat a Blood Moon, and then some. Congratulations to Dom Harvey, moving on to 10-3 here in Barcelona. Round number 13 is in the books, my friends. We are getting ready to take a break here. There you do see the German juggernaut, unfortunately picking up a loss last round to his good friend and teammate Gabriel Nassif. We'll have updates on that and so much more at the news desk right after this.